all I can say. Wow. I'm 46 years old and I've been in mining and civil works for almost 28 years now. I've been working since I was 18, and to stand before you with 500 of you in this field is just amazing. And it actually makes my heart very glad to see that. So Sabina, thank you very much for actually inviting me to talk today. It's a privilege and an honour, and I hope I honour that for you. So ladies, I'm going to talk a little bit today about myself, obviously, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things I've done wrong, because I think it helps to talk to people and explain that not what everything we do has got us to where we've actually gotten to. But I want to explain these things to you, and I ask you for Chatham House rules, because obviously these stories about myself go beyond and affect my actual employment. So I ask you to keep those to yourselves. But please, I hope you take inspiration from them. All right. I particularly have chosen this picture here for you about making your own luck. And if you forget everything I say today, I'd like you to remember this. When I started, the glass ceiling was about 10 feet thick. In fact, it was so thick you couldn't see through it. So what I want you to do is to have a look at this picture and realise that for people who've gone before me, for ladies who've gone before me, this is the state of the glass ceiling now. And it only takes a little bit of effort, a little bit of concentration and defined goals, and you can push through that. So I'm going to talk about what is Donna Rathbone. Now I want to be very clear about this. What I am is often the labels that I'm actually given. It's not who I am. So let's talk about some of the things that I'm currently involved in. I'm a wife. That's my husband Rob. We've been married for almost 17 years now, which in itself is a success story in the mining industry. Now I actually do FIFO. So Rob and I both used to do FIFO, and Rob actually currently works in town now in Perth. He actually has worked for Tees for 25, almost 26 years now, which is quite unusual. And because of that long-standing relationship, he has some special rewards given to him, like when I'm away he can come into work late and he can go home early. And when I'm home he goes to work early and comes home late. So we get to share looking after our son, and that's not because I'm home, okay? All right, I'm also a mother. As you might notice, I don't look like Princess Kate. No mother looks like Princess Kate after having a baby. That's about 3 days after a very, very, very serious crash Caesar. And that wasn't a pleasant experience. But I've got to say, that's when they've just taken out all the lines, so I'm very, very pleased to have that happen. And that's been one of the most rewarding things that have actually happened in my life. I have to be honest, before I had a child, I hated children. I did. I was one of those horrible ladies who used to sit in a cafe with their cup of coffee and glare at the toddler as the toddler went by. How things have come back and hit me smack in the face. That was in 2002. I'm also an engineer. Some of these photos are fairly embarrassing because this was the early 90s when big glasses were the thing, and the haircuts are really quite bizarre. So be wary of things that you do to your hair, ladies. They come back and haunt you. So this is when I graduated from engineering, and I want to tell you a little bit about this. One of the things I'm going to talk to you today about is resilience. When I come from I'm a fifth generation Western Australian. I'm quite rare. And as a consequence, I come from a very patriarchal family. So men are men in my family and women are in the kitchen. So it was very difficult, as you could probably imagine, to actually move into engineering. One of the things I did, I actually started engineering to make my dad proud of me. It was a very confronting thing after 12 months when I needed some more money to continue studying, when I went to my dad and said, "Dad, can I please have more than $20 a week pocket money?" He said, "Nah, you're Sheila. Sheilas don't do engineering, you'll fail. I'm not giving you any more money, I'm not participating in this anymore." Now, I love my dad, but you've got to understand, this is the 80s, and this is a different time. So I still am in contact with my dad. I love my dad. He's probably one of my greatest mentors. But you've got to understand about extreme forgiveness. And I ask you all to practice extreme forgiveness. You need to in your work environment. So I actually got a job, and we had some family stuff going on as well, and I near on had a nervous breakdown in my second year. Failed about half my units. I managed to keep going part-time and working full-time. And after about 3 years of the degree, I'd almost finished 2 years of the 4-year degree. And then Curtin University decided to change the course. And they brought in computers, which, if you think about it now, they didn't have computers. Yeah, they actually didn't have computers. So they brought in computers, and all the things like the hand drafting and all the other things that I've done, like brazing and welding and oxy-cutting and all those other things that I learned how to do, were thrown out the window, and they brought in Fortran and True Basic and all sorts of other things I had to learn, and AutoCAD. So all of a sudden I found myself, after 3 years of study, back in first year again. And at that point is when I thought, is this really for me? So what I did is I went and spent $800 of my own money, and I went to Bilby Management Consultants, and I spent 2 days in testing to actually see what my personality was actually made up and whether it was actually a good fit for engineering. Probably the best $800 I've ever spent. It's probably equivalent to about $5,000 now. What I found about myself was, actually, you are fitted and suited for engineering, and it gave me the impetus and the momentum to continue, which is what I did. It is probably the start of the journey of self-awareness. We all think we know who we are, but we're not sure how we're actually perceived on the outside. In fact, I may suggest that most of us don't actually know how we're perceived on the outside. And I would encourage you all, at some stage or another, please go and spend some time, invest in yourself, and work out who you are. Work out how you're perceived. It so helps you in your career. So I'm also a leader. This is a great photograph. This is back from when I was working in Telfer. We used to work 8 weeks on, 1 week off, and we didn't get paid for our week off. So I'm on a pretty cushy R&R roster at the moment on 8 days on, 6 days off, which is pretty incredible when you think where we started. This photo is really important. I was actually working for Pioneer Concrete in their quarries division, and it actually shows me and how I probably prefer to be. This is not me. I like to get my hands on things. I like to use my brain, and I like to use my brawn. And I've never asked anybody to do something that I wouldn't do myself. Number 1 lesson of leadership. I'm a lifelong learner. These photos are quite important. This is when I first started work. I was 18 years old. I was working for a local government. I was actually doing some survey work. I was setting out some subdivision roads. You'll notice that I haven't got any work boots on. There were no work boots for women in those days. I wore sand shoes. You'll notice I don't have any reflective gear on. We didn't have equipment and clothing given to us. We had to pay for them ourselves. And you'll notice what I'm actually wearing is a khaki shirt. That's the difference between now and 30 years ago when I first started. And you can see the blonde 80s big hair. All right, I'm also a mad keen diver, and I'm a mad keen fisherman. And these photos are just up there to show off. Okay? And this is what I do to relax. I've just recently bought myself a boat, and in about 2 weeks' time, my husband and a whole group of friends of mine are moving up north to go fishing. I can't wait. So let's talk about who Donna Rathbone actually is. I'm actually resilient. The story about how I did my engineering degree will give you some idea of the guts and determination I have underneath me. It's the most important thing I've had. Often the jobs that I've been promoted into and done very well in is because I've been the last man standing. I've often had several project managers, and particularly about 3 in a row about 3 years ago, that fell over and failed. And I ended up with the job not because of my skills, which I do have, it's because I was the last person standing. When I got that role, I made it my own. And we tripled our size of our production as we ramped up, and I drove all our lead indicators and all our injuries down at the same time. It's one thing I'm extremely proud of. I created a high-performing team, people who cared about each other, and I did that because I let people know and see who I am and what I care about. So as a woman, when you're out in the workforce, you don't have to be bravo, tough, all those other things. You just actually have to show your care and be really clear about what your values are and what you stand for, where your line in the sand is, what you won't tolerate and what you'll accept. And those things are for you, individual and all about self-awareness. I encourage you again, find out about yourself. I'm passionate. You cannot have resilience unless you are passionate. If you find yourself getting out of bed every morning wishing you didn't have to go to work, guess what? You're not passionate about what you're doing. And I suggest that you find what you love and do it, whatever it is. For me, it's digging holes. I love digging holes. Not because of the hole, but because of the people. Because I enjoy people. I love working with people. It's one of the reasons why, as a civil construction engineer, I don't do civil construction. Because in civil construction, all the relationships are with subcontractors and they tend to be very short term. 2 weeks for a tiler, 6 months for a grano worker. These things tend to be short term, and I find myself playing policeman most of the time and not being able to influence. I joined mining and stay in mining because I have the power to influence over time. And it is the most rewarding part of my job. This year, I've actually had 2 of my previous employees ring me. Got the thrill of my life when I heard these 2 guys had done their quarry manager's ticket and one had just accepted a mining manager's job in South Australia. For me, it's become so much not about the destination, but about the journey. I am so stubborn. It is also a great thing, but it is also a burden. And sometimes the most important thing that I've had to learn over my career is to listen, to stop and really listen to others to understand what their problems are. And lots of mistakes made when I haven't listened. I'm courageous. I hope I have enough time to tell you a story about that. And we'll talk about that in that story. I'm also human. Very important to understand. I've been to a lot of these things and I've heard these wonderful women speaking. I'm not perfect. I'm just human. I'm just very clear about where I want to go and what I want to do to get there. So please, if you speak to someone they've worked with me before and you've heard me swear, it's one of the things I'm not perfect about. All right, things that have helped me. Self-awareness, as I've already said. I'm going to tell you a third time. Self-awareness. Find out about yourself and how you're perceived, because often it's really a blind spot for us. Lifelong learning. As I was introduced, I've just started as of Wednesday, the last night, in my Masters. Now, I'm doing a special Masters. I'm doing a Masters of Business Leadership. I'm not doing a Masters of Business Administration, although the Masters of Business Leadership has inspired me. In my journey from here on in my learning, I've actually won a scholarship for Women in Leadership for 2014, and I'm actually participating in that program in 2014. 2015, I'll be starting my MBA, and I'll be doing it at 1 unit a year for 6 years, because I've already got half the units with my MBL. So what is the MBL? It's the Masters of Business Leadership at Curtin Graduate School. About 15 years ago, I looked around and realised that the leadership styles that we were using in mining contracting were not working anymore. I'd come through the same filter as everybody else. It was my way or the highway or the purple circle leadership style, and it doesn't work anymore. As our group of people that we've actually employed from has shrunk, and we're not employing white males from the age of 21 to 55 as a whole group anymore, we're employing more women, we're employing more culturally different people from India and other places. We need to actually have more tools in our leadership toolbox, and I realised that. And I realised what we were doing wasn't working. And I looked around the organisation that I was actually in at the time, and previous organisations, and I discovered that there was nobody there to teach me the new leadership skills that I needed. So I needed to look outside the organisation. And it took me about 6 years of actually looking around to discover the Masters of Business Leadership. And I've been doing 3 units a year for 4 years. I can't wait till November, sorry. But what I discovered through that is I actually got out of the mining mindset, and I've been working with some of the most inspirational people that I've ever met. The lecturers are outstanding. It's worth every cent that I've paid for it, and I have paid for it myself. Can I encourage you, don't let your development be up to the company that you work for. They will only give you the minimum of what they can get away with because it's a cost to them. Please invest in yourself. I've spent $40,000 on my Masters of Business Leadership, and over the last year my wage has probably gone up $80,000 to $100,000. It's been one of the best investments I've ever made in my life. And if I can encourage you to do that and leave here today, that will be fantastic. Have a look at the Masters of Business Leadership. It talks about all the different sorts of things, and I've got an amazing toolbox now that I can assist people with, which has been excellent. Supporting others, especially women. I love Martin Albright. She actually said this, there's a special place in hell for women who don't help others. And it is true. Sometimes the filters that we've actually gone through to get where we've got have made us hard and have made us competitive. And we need to understand that if we need to get that shattered glass ceiling gone forever, we need to help other women come with us. And that means avoiding gossiping, backstabbing, and what I recently discovered as lateral violence. It was a great term, and it really talks about women in general. In a society, we've been very good at manipulation. And most women in organisations don't have positional power, so we exert our presence by creating lateral violence and manipulation. Can I say to you and encourage you not to do this? This causes us great harm, and we need to avoid this in order to move through that glass ceiling. So encourage other women every moment you can. I mentor officially and unofficially several mentees, and I've kept in contact with some of them for over 15 years. It's really important. I've learnt more from them than they have from me. It's been fantastic. Assertive, not aggressive. I still struggle with this. I still struggle with this because of the filter I've actually gone through. I'm actually quite aggressive if I need to be. But as I've learnt over the years, even when I know I'm being assertive, it's not socially acceptable sometimes for women to be assertive. And to understand that and practice, as I said before, extreme forgiveness on yourself as well as other people. And communication, communication, communication. That means not talking all the time, listening. That means being able to talk at a conference like this today and go to a toolbox tomorrow and be able to talk at that level, and then go into boardroom tomorrow and talk at that level. Learn how the languages are different and use them where appropriately. It's probably our greatest skill as women. It's probably the one we don't actually think about the most. And lastly, be authentic. When you've made a mistake, stick your hand up and say, I've made a mistake, but this is what I'm doing about it. I'm moving forward. And just very quickly, as a new supervisor, when I was working at a place called Barnacote, which is up at Laverton, I had a crew that was absolutely, the only way you can describe it is feral. It was my very first supervisor's role. And for about 6 months, it was absolutely hell. And I don't mind telling you, some nights I went home and I howled into my pillow because it was tough. It was really tough. But I was actually working on night shift, and I was out putting out some dots for the heights to make sure that the digger wasn't digging too deep. And I noticed that everybody was talking in their cabs and they were laughing their heads off. And excuse the expression, but I thought, you bastards, you're talking about me. And I jumped back in my car and I never heard another thing that night. And I jumped out and I got a tour and I stuck it in my jacket and did more spot heights out on the pit, never heard another thing, but I knew that they were talking about me and embarrassing me and being rude, crude and socially undesirable. Before we finished that shift that morning, I got onto the bus. It was still pitch black. It was the middle of winter. And I said, if I ever fornicatingly hear what I fornicatingly heard last night on the two-way, I will rip you out of your machine so fast you won't know what fornicatingly happened to you. And at that stage, I said, does everybody understand? And they said yes. And I got off the bus, knowing full well I'd not heard a single thing. Over the next 3 weeks, I had almost every single operator in that operation that night come to my office and apologise for all the rude things that they said about me. That is courage, and sometimes you have to step out and do that sort of thing. I want to thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to you, and I hope and wish you all well in your careers, and I hope that you, along with me and everybody's gone before it, smash through that ceiling, and it isn't there for people who come after us. Thank you.